extra points for being here today. And if Baylor is half the school that I think it is, every professor that you have will certainly say, if you were at that Huckabee rally, you definitely deserve extra points.
Can I quote you on that?
You may quote me on that. In fact, I want you to quote me on that. Since you've got your cell phone pointed at me, you probably are quoting me on that. Let me tell you why this election is so important. Everybody in America is going to be seeing what happens in Texas Tuesday. Most of them assume that the real race is between Hillary and Obama. And the thing is that the Republicans have already decided. But I know that's not the case, because we have won in states that are critical to a Republican winning in November. We won in states like Kansas and Louisiana and Georgia and Alabama. We won in Iowa. We won in Tennessee and Arkansas and West Virginia. We've won in states that you have to win in order to become the nominee of the party. And I know that some of the reporters nationally sitting in their little desk in Washington will say, well, let's look at the math. Let's look at the math. Interesting thing about the math is no two television networks even have the same numbers for how many delegates have been obtained by either Senator McCain or by me. If it's such a perfecting absolute science, how come no one's numbers match up?
That's right.
But here's the number. Until someone has 1,191 delegates, we don't have a nominee yet. And if we don't have someone who has those delegates by the time of the convention decides. This party has historically been a strong party and wins elections when we hold fast to our conservative principles that believe that lower taxes are better than higher taxes, less government is better than more government, limited government is better than unlimited government, local government is better than Washington government, mothers and fathers raise kids better than governments do. That Republicans win with. And those are the principles which I run on. I'm the only guy in this race who does not have a Washington address. The only guy who does have chief executive experience, who's actually run something, especially run something like a government, which is what a president has to do. If you're satisfied with what Washington has been doing to solve the problems in this country, you've got plenty of choices, because everybody else has been in Washington helping to make the mess that we're trying to fix. Now, there's a basic difference between me and some people running. Some people believe that it's the government's job to fix us. I think it's our job to fix the government. When I think about this great land, I'm reminded every day that the greatness of America is not in the people elected to office. It's in its ordinary people who every day get up and make this country function. Our founders had an amazing vision of America. And it's very different than the kind of vision that sometimes you hear politicians talk about. Because their vision was essentially self-governance. We would govern ourselves. We would need a whole lot of government external to us, because the most important government is the government right here. Our own conscience. Our own heart that tells us that some things are right and some things are wrong. And we would do the right thing, and when we did the right thing based on that internal conscience, we don't need a lot of other government telling us beyond that. We intuitively know we shouldn't murder somebody. We shouldn't steal from somebody. We shouldn't lie to somebody. Now, the degree to which we violate that is the degree to which we have to have some more government spelling out in specifics. Do you realize that if there was a completely moral climate going on in business, we'd have very little need of government regulation for business? We'd know that when you sold a pound of something, it was actually 16 ounces. We would know that a gallon meant just that. We would know that a dollar meant a dollar. We would have a clear understanding that we practice a sense of right versus wrong. That kind of self-governance is what our founding fathers envisioned. And they saw little need for a whole bunch of government, because they knew a couple of things. The more government we had, the less freedom we would have. And they also knew the more government we had, the more expensive it would get. And when government says it's going to do something for you, just remember that it first has to take something from you. And what it takes, it never gives back. And it always takes more than it does give back. The answers are in that when we come back to this simple notion that our founding fathers had with their rather radical idea, in fact, it started a revolution. Here's what they said. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. One of the reasons your vote is important is because I'm the only candidate in this race who truly believes that there is intrinsic worth and value in every human being, every human life. And my friend, I believe that that comes from our very founding. When our founding fathers said that we're all created equal, they meant that no person is more equal or less equal because of their net worth or their position in life or because of their last name or who their parents are or what job they have. And throughout our history, that concept of equality of each person's worth has so permeated our civilization that even in the battlefield, when a soldier is felled by a bullet, we don't simply say, hey, he's no longer capable of fighting, so he's lost his purpose and his function. He now has less value. Our doctrine is we leave no man behind on the battlefield. It's a point of honor that we go after every last soldier on the battlefield because his worth and his value is not merely in his function. His worth and his value is he's one of us. He's an American. And we value his life because of who he is, not what he does. This is fundamental to us. And so the principle of life is such that whether it's an unborn child or an elderly person with a terminal illness, we treat that person with dignity and with respect and with honor because that's the way we would want to be treated. The battleground of the world is really a battleground whether we will be a culture of life or a culture of death. Today we face an extraordinary foe, Islamofascism. At the heart of it, it's a culture of death. It says it's okay to strap a bomb to the belly of your own child and march that child into a room like this and set the bomb off in order to make a political point and to further the cause. That seems repulsive to us. Intuitively, it seems so repulsive that we would ever have the idea that we would sacrifice our own children just for the politics of our cause. That's why we as a nation cannot turn our backs on this very important truth. All of us are equal. And that idea is what makes it possible for many of us to be here. You know, I know that some of you who are students at Baylor are here because of incredible sacrifices that your parents have made. Others of you are here because sacrifices that you are making. In fact, many of you are making huge sacrifices, and your parents are making some huge sacrifices for you to be at Baylor getting a college education. What's more remarkable, many of you are first-generation college students. No one before you graduated from college. You'll be the first in your family to do it. And that's something to be proud of. In my own family, my dad used to say, son, don't look too far up the family tree. There's stuff up there you don't need to see. Boy, was he ever right. I know from which I come. Like the prophet Isaiah who said, look to the rock from which you were hewn. Look to the quarry from which you were dug. My mother was the oldest of 7 kids growing up in a house in South Arkansas with dirt floors, no electricity, outdoor toilets. My father was a man who never finished high school. In fact, I'm not just the first generation to go to college. I'm the first generation male in my entire family lineage to even graduate high school. I know something of what it means to sort of break beyond where I'd been. But it wasn't that I did it by myself. My parents made amazing sacrifices for that to happen. They were a part of what we sometimes call the greatest generation. And we call them that because there was a generation that went through a Great Depression and a World War and did not sit around and say, oh, life's been hard. Here was a group of people who did have hardship, who sometimes didn't know whether there would be food on the table tonight. But it didn't make them angry and bitter and resentful. It made them resilient and resolved that their kids would live better than they ever dreamed. And as a result, many of us today have not just life, but we have a level of prosperity that they could not have imagined because they made the sacrifices for us to have it. Now, the sad